How's it going?
Going okay. All things considered, I think I'm doing all right. Been weird year for everybody and a weird couple months for me. I just moved yesterday, so I'm just surrounded by boxes, and I also have like a 10-week-old puppy who just loves to chew on boxes. So it's been pretty wild.
You just got a puppy?
Yeah, yep. Weird time to get a puppy because of the moving thing, but it all just kind of came together, and he's too cute to say no to. So
Just to start, the reason you're here is you guys came out with a new EP a little over a month ago. This place sucks ass. Talk about that for a second. It's just kind of interesting how you guys have kind of considered yourself not a prolific band, and with again these crazy times. How did this EP come together? And was there always going to be music released from you guys in this year?
yeah, no, there's always going to be music coming out. The EP is 6 songs, and 4 of them were actually recorded over a year ago, with the rest of the songs off our last record, Morbid Stuff.
Yeah.
So those 4 songs, I guess some would call them B-sides. I don't think any of us really think of them as B-sides. They're just kind of, we recorded them all at the same time, and we set those 4 aside for this EP specifically. And then there's one cover which we recorded, you know, during the pandemic, socially distanced, and one new song that we wrote and recorded during the pandemic as well. I just felt like we kind of needed to round out the rest of the songs with something that was a little bit more, of the moment, I guess.
That's funny you say that because I feel like this whole thing is of the moment. Like, were these songs sectioned off for a reason? Did they not fit the narrative of Morbid Stuff? Or was that just kind of like, oh, we'll use these later?
They definitely were not included for specific reasons that were not, it was not that we didn't like them. So definitely a few of the songs, like 3 of those 4 songs, just didn't fit the flow of the album because they were just too kind of outside of our world. There's a song that we all really love, which was always going to be the sort of the anchor of the EP. It's called Anaphylaxis. That was one of our kind of favorite songs that came out of the Morbid Stuff session, but it's just so spazzy that we couldn't find the right spot for it on the album. It's just kind of just all over the place. We decided to kind of build the rest of the EP around that song. And that includes, like, there's a track called Edmonton, which is a minute long, and
Yeah.
probably the heaviest song we've written. And so that also is just not sort of making sense with the rest of the flow of Morbid Stuff, which is a pretty like dark but goofy record. And that song is just dark and angry. So it kind of felt like that just kind of broke the mood of Morbid Stuff. So we kind of like based the EP around those two tracks, and everything else sort of fell into place.
Anaphylaxis, I feel like is definitely the focal point of this. I would love to talk about like how was that song written? Was the bee sting more of a narrative point kind of, or was it just like you've had this feeling before and I'm gonna write about it?
So that song is actually based on a real a real thing that happened to a friend of mine. We were at a cottage together. It was Thanksgiving, and we'd all been drinking a little bit too much, and he got stung by a bee. You can follow the story in the song. Like, his whole face started swelling up. He wasn't able to talk. He was like starting to have trouble breathing, and we were like, well, we're too drunk to drive to the hospital. Like, this is not, we're kind of out in the boonies. Like, ambulances don't really go there. It's up a dirt road and stuff. And so his cousin from down the road had to come bail us out. She was sober, so she drove in and picked him up and took him to the hospital. And his wife was just kind of roasting him the whole time because he looked so ridiculous. Like, his face was so swollen, it was like grotesque. And so she was just kind of finding humor in that pretty anxious moment and like kind of lightening the mood by just ripping on him. That feeling is sort of a pretty pervasive feeling in all of PUP songs. Like, trying to find this lightheartedness amidst all this angst and darkness. And that whole situation just kind of spoke to exactly what this band is about. And so I just thought I had to write about it. The other thing being, the way that this guy describes the feeling is a feeling that I think if you're a person who experiences severe anxiety the way that I do and a couple of the other guys in the band do, it's just extremely relatable. It's crazy how a mental illness manifests the same way as like a very physical illness, and that's something that we also explore a lot in our music.
Yeah, I mean, your videos are always talked about. The Anaphylaxis video, was that kind of your drunken point of view of just the gratuity of the situation happening? Because that video is just ridiculously awesome.
So we met this guy named Callum Scott Dyson, and he does like claymation and stuff. And we had this idea that we wanted to just show this anaphylactic sort of meltdown, and what better way to do that than using claymation, because you can just like make the clay melt and do just gross stuff. We kind of threw that idea at Callum and he ran with it. He's such a talented dude. It turned out real great. We're very lucky to know that guy.
That's great. Yeah. Are there going to be any other videos for the songs on the EP?
I'm not sure. We're definitely putting out at least one other kind of live video. We did a live stream about a month ago. I think it went pretty well. So we're going to put out a few songs from that live stream because it's not available anymore. It was only available for 72 hours. We put a lot into that live stream, and it went really well from our perspective. And we kind of felt like it was a bit of a shame that it was only up for 72 hours. So we're just trying to harvest a couple more songs from that and put that out.
That was the first time all of you played together since this all started, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
That's insane. Yeah, I saw the Rob performance, and that was just like, I loved how it was shot. Like, it felt very much like there's no barricade, and you're just like in the face of the band. It was really fun to watch. One more thing, I guess, about the EP is, your art. You stated that kind of just some of this stuff starts as a joke or just a simple idea. How does that creative process go through the band? Like, how does one little thing become a part of the band, like for a video or an album art?
We all have pretty stupid sense of humor, kind of sick sense of humor, and very kind of tongue-in-cheek. We're not a self-serious band. Like, we take ourselves seriously in the sense that we care about writing music that we like and that we think is good, but we're very not self-serious in the sense that there's nothing worse in my mind than a self-serious emo band. Because the point of music for me anyways is to sort of be a little bit therapeutic. And I feel like for me and for the other guys, the way that we get that is by kind of taking this dark subject matter and just kind of making light of it as much as possible, and finding the funny moments in it. So yeah, we're a very not self-serious band. A lot of what we do kind of stems from dumb jokes. The EP title, "This Place Sucks Ass," obviously is very stupid. And we are so negative, the four of us, to the point that it's funny. Like, we find it ridiculous, like how glass half empty we are. So "This place sucks ass" is just like a thing we used to say constantly to each other, no matter where we were in the world. It just sucked ass to us, and we thought that was pretty funny. And then, as this whole COVID situation started to unfold, it was just kind of a joke. Started to feel a little too real to almost be funny, which is kind of like how we feel like about a lot of our songs. It turned into an EP title because, everywhere sucks ass right now. No matter where you are and no matter where you're from, it sucks ass. So it just seemed like a particularly kind of relevant title, and one that we could all laugh at and sort of keep things a little bit light. And then, the album art from there, we passed it on to a friend who is just like, everybody that we work with understands that kind of how ridiculous we are and how not self-serious we are. So everybody that we work with just wants to also create art that is just stupid and fun and making fun of, the darkness that we all have to slog through every day. So Yeah, we're very lucky. We've surrounded ourselves with a bunch of very creative people with dark senses of humor, and it just kind of all works.
I'm kind of interested now. Like when people come up to you after a show, do a lot of people take you guys seriously, or is it mostly like everyone's in on the joke?
I think most people are in on the joke. I mean, like I said, we're a serious band.
Oh
Like
yeah.
we're serious in the sense that we work very hard and we care very much about our music and very much about our videos, and we care about everything. We care often too much. So it is a serious thing, and I think most of our fans treat it the same way we do, in the sense that they take us seriously as a band, but they realize that the purpose of this band is to kind of make ourselves feel better and to make the people who listen to it feel better. So about doom and gloom and feeling sorry for ourselves. It's about trying to find a bit of joy in all the trash that's happening, you know?
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
actually funny because I was watching another interview with you guys, and like I saw you talking like so adamantly about your Toyota Camry. And as someone who has a 20-year-old Toyota Camry, I have never felt more like in depth with it. Like they're like, "Fuck yeah, yes, they get me." It's just so funny, but like yeah, in a serious way too. It's like that's part of my life. That's just how it is,
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love that car. Uh,
dude. I
they
was
just
so happy when I found out I was talking to you, and because I agree completely with what you said. Sorry.
they just don't die. Those cars, amazing. So yeah, yeah. I had that car for, it was my mom's car, and then it was my sister's car, and then it was my car, and then I got to drive it in a demolition derby. So pretty good life that thing had, and pretty good way to go out in a blaze of glory, I guess.
I gotta think of something very ceremonious when mine finally goes, but probably won't beat that. That's great, man. It's just also interesting, like you were saying, you've been really busy these past few months. You also wrote a children's book for adults, Rupert Reaper. I want to talk about that for a second because that's just really insanely cool. How was the writing for that different than a PUP album? How did that come about, actually?
It's funny that you asked that, because the way I approached it was actually very similar to a pop album. Like, just to give some context, it's a nihilistic book for kids. It's about a very little, very cute Grim Reaper who's extremely depressed because every time he makes a friend, he accidentally kills them, and he's just like, he spirals into this existential crisis. Thematically, it's very similar to a lot of pop songs because it is about something that's very dark. Fair warning, trigger warning here. The Reaper tries to kill himself, which is dark, but also really stupid and funny because he's literally the harbinger of death. How can he deliver death to himself? He just can't. So, in the same way as a lot of pop songs, it's kind of dark, but I think it's pretty humorous and kind of deals with the darkness in a goofy way. And it just sort of reflects my sense of humor. I mean, I think I wrote that book because when the pandemic started, I was writing lots of music. And for a minute, it was going well. And then it just started to get too dark. Like, it started to there was no redeeming, fun qualities to the music. And that's not the kind of music I want to make. I decided to set down the guitar for a couple of months and try to do something that was fun for me and low pressure. And drawing and writing stories is very fun for me and very low pressure because nobody expects anything out of me. I'm not an author. I'm not a cartoonist. Just in the act of doing something that was fun and stress free, I kind of regained this dark sense of humor that I felt like I'd lost. So that really like came out through that kid's book, I think, and then through that, rediscovering that kind of lightness, that sense of humor, in turn has translated into me kind of getting back into writing and writing music and kind of getting right back into that fun headspace. And it's been really helpful for me.
That's awesome. So right now you're just writing music.
Yeah, I'm doing a few things. I'm writing music for a few different projects, and of course, always kind of for PUP as well. I had a great time doing that book. It's the first time I've ever done something like that. I'm pretty I'm pretty proud of how it turned out. So I'm just kind of kicking around some other ideas about other kind of stupid graphic novel or kids books that I can kind of do. So I've been kind of sketching out some rough stuff for that. But yeah, definitely I've been busy with music, and I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself. I think a lot of people are putting a lot of pressure on themselves during this pandemic. Like, I've heard so many people say, like whatever Shakespeare wrote, whatever fucking King Lear during the pandemic or whatever. It's like, who the fuck cares? I'm not Shakespeare. Like, none of us are Shakespeare. Like, stop taking yourself so seriously. So I'm trying to kind of approach music with a sort of new, lighthearted attitude. If I sit down and write and nothing comes out, I don't punish myself. I just realize that times are weird, and there's going to be a lot of weird days where nothing comes out. And if something good comes out, I just try to appreciate it and enjoy the ride, and remember that the purpose of playing music for me is to have fun and to find some levity in life, and I just try to get that a little bit of that every day through playing the guitar and writing songs.
So it's just a step-by-step process. You never kind of like make yourself do anything. You never are like, today I'm going to do this. It's just like whatever flows.
Well, I do make myself do things like when I'm getting into the writing mode, I have to write every day. Like I have to sit down for at least a couple hours every day and write. I find that for me with songwriting, if you don't do that, like if you take a couple of months off of songwriting, which I do often, when you start writing again, everything is dog shit. And it takes some time to, a few weeks to kind of get back into it. And once you're in it, you can't let it go because creativity starts flowing. I do make a point of writing music for a couple hours every day. I'm just saying that I don't, if I sit down for 2 hours and nothing good comes of it, I'm not too bummed out. I realize that it wasn't a useless activity. I'm I'm like keeping that writing muscle going. And if nothing good comes out, that's fine. Something good will come out the next day or the day after, or eventually. It's like the more pressure you put on yourself, or at least for me, the more pressure I put on myself, the less likely I am to create something that's good. So I just kind of go easy on myself, and music, I don't think you can force yourself to be creative, but I think if you're not trying to be creative every day, you're going to be less likely to capture that magic when it comes.
That's a really good point, man. So have you always been like that? Or is this kind of something you've learned over the past 10 years?
It's definitely something I've learned. I used to play in other bands. I wasn't the main songwriter. I was kind of a secondary songwriter. My first band put out a couple of records, and on every record, I would have like, 2 or 3 songs that I wrote on it. And so that's super low pressure. That's like writing 2 songs a year. Like you don't really have to, it's just like whatever. And then kind of switching to PUP, I've sort of become the primary songwriter in a band. There's just a lot more. You got to put out a record every 2 years, and you have to write 12 to 15 songs for that record so that you can scrap the bad ones or whatever. I have been a lot more conscious over the past years of the fact that I can't just sit around and wait for inspiration to strike. I kind of got to go and be proactive, otherwise I might only write 1 song a year. So actually, beginning with the second record, one thing that I did when we started writing that record was for 2 months, I made sure that I wrote a full song every week, like front to back, full lyrics, bridge, chorus, like the whole thing, 1 song a week. So in the first 2 months, I wrote 8 or 9 songs, and most of them were absolute dog shit. Just the going through those motions and writing all those songs kind of got the juices flowing. And then I found that, maybe the 10th song that I went to write was great. And then from there, it gets easier and easier and easier.
What are some like interesting moments or memorable moments you had from being from like early shows? And also I'm always curious about this. What did you call shows like that you played? Were they basement shows, small shows? I go to Texas and I've heard them called little punk shows.
Toronto's always had a very good kind of DIY scene. Even when, the 4 of us were growing up, even when we were in high school, there was like a great community. There were tons of all ages venues. It was easy to book shows. put on your own shows because there are so many all ages venues, and there are also lots of kind of like support slots available because there were so many all ages venues. So many touring bands were coming through Toronto, and you could get your band on, a first to four slot on those shows pretty easily. So my sort of experience starting off in bands, we did a lot of basement shows, a lot of basement shows. That was sort of how a lot of things got started for us. We did a lot of shows in church basements, weirdly enough. People had inns and they wouldn't care if we put on shows as long as nobody was like drinking or smoking inside. And I'm not a church guy. I don't believe in God, to each their own, but I was very fortunate and grateful to get the opportunity to play in these kind of safe spaces for kids. So I did a lot of that, did a lot of basement house shows. And then because there were so many all ages venues in Toronto at the time, we did a lot of like kind of smaller club shows and a lot of shows at community centers and rec centers as well. A lot of just kind of like playing on the floor, the crowd right in front of you. Yeah, tons of fun. We still try to kind of go back and do similar things to that once in a while. It's hard now. I mean, obviously it's impossible right now, but in general, it's kind of hard. It's just hard to make that happen at the kind of point that we are at. But we do make a point of, a couple times a year, we try to play, a rec center or something that can fit 50 kids and just kind of reconnect with our roots.
That's so interesting. And like, yeah, another thing that you guys are definitely really spoken for, which is, amazing for everyone in the punk scene, is your stance on safe spaces. It feels like, was Toronto and all those scenes, that scene growing up, was that more of a safer space, you would say, than like obviously coming to America and there's a lot of assholes?
Oh, I mean,
there's assholes there too, probably, but
there's assholes everywhere. Most of the world is filled with assholes,
Oh yeah.
But, there's also good people everywhere. I mean, I think we have been fortunate to, both when we were younger playing in other bands and especially now in PUP, to be part of a community that really cares about that kind of thing, where everyone is welcome. Again, there are assholes everywhere, but 99% of the people and percent of the time, everyone is there looking out for each other and understanding that if everyone has a good time, that's the best case scenario, rather than one person having a good time and making it miserable for everyone else. So our crowds are pretty good at like kind of self-policing. We do as much work as we can too to make sure that everyone feels safe and welcome. It's so important to us. Like we're not interested in playing shows at any point again if we're not playing shows where everyone feels safe and welcome. So it's a thing that we work hard on, and it's so important. I mean, it's not really a fair thing for me to say because I'm a straight white guy, but in a different way, I always felt safe at every show I went. When I was a kid in the Toronto scene, I felt safe. And I guess more what I'm talking about in that situation is like safe from bullying or safe from people getting too violent in the pit or whatever. Because I've always been a small dude. I've always just like felt safe in this community and at these shows. And I'm grateful for that. And I want to make sure that, now that I'm the one on stage, I want to make sure that everyone else, regardless of who you are or where you're from, or that you have that same experience where you can feel safe and surrounded by people who are going to take care of you. Do you think it's bands' responsibility to kind of foster that community? Rolling a boulder down a hill, like once bands start it and everyone gets on board, people start caring and taking care of each other and creating a safe scene for themselves. And that's like really awesome and inspiring. And yeah, I'm sure it's the same at New Jersey, in New Jersey basement shows and stuff like that. With us, once that community got established, that we don't tolerate a lot of things. What we care most about is that everyone is feeling safe and having a good time. People just kind of take that as their own responsibility to make sure that their scene is safe. And if you care about your music community and your scene, you'll do anything to keep it safe and welcoming, because you want to grow it and you want shows to be fun and you don't want to, create a toxic environment, and then bands stop coming and people stop hanging out, and it's no good.
One thing, just again, going back to the college radio thing, I just feel like the way that people find music is through labels. Have you ever been labeled as something ridiculous or heard someone label a band? Like, what's the most interesting way that you've heard a band been labeled?
I don't know. That's a really tough question to answer, because I think, a lot of bands, especially ones that don't fall into a specific category, would say, I don't believe in labels and whatever. I get that sentiment, but I also think that if you can't describe your music, then you better figure something else out, because people need some sort of context, some general context of what your band sounds like. Or if you're a fan of a band, you can't just be like, oh well, they straddle all genres and great. No one's gonna listen to that. Like, we get called a punk band a lot. I don't think we're a straight up punk band. Well, I know we're not a straight up punk band, but you got to start somewhere. You have to give people some sort of context. When I'm sort of describing our music to maybe people who are less attuned to the music world, people who don't listen to punk music, they just listen to the radio or whatever, I generally say, like, we kind of sound like Weezer, but a lot heavier. And that's not exactly right, but you can immediately get a sense of sort of the world in which we reside. So that gives people some context, and they can check it out, and they like it or they don't like it. Who's to say? But I do think labels can be useful, as much as it kind of sucks to get pigeonholed.
I bet a lot of people are like, "Oh, I love Beverly Hills," but oh, that's such a bad joke. But yeah. I mean, I agree. It's not like, oh, labels are bad. It's interesting how people label artists. Like, being in the music field, I just always found that interesting. Did you ever do college radio? Because I know you worked at a label for a bit, right?
Yeah, I worked at a label for a while. I've started my own label called Little Dipper that we've been putting out the PUP stuff and a few other projects that I'm very proud of. I did work in college radio, I should say. I volunteered in college radio. I had a radio show at my school for a short time. I'm not the most charismatic public speaker, so it was very clear to me early on that being a radio host was not for me. I recorded some bands at another radio show at another university radio station, was a board op for a few other commercial stations. So I had a minute in radio. I can't say I loved it. The thing that I wanted to do was kind of share my passion for music with people as a host, but I'm not cut out for that. So I learned very quickly that radio was not for me.
The thing that I found interesting, though, is, do you still consider yourselves a DIY band or like a DIY artist even after all this acclaim and success of the past few albums?
So that's definitely where our roots are. We're very much a DIY band when we started, but I think it's disingenuous. I think it's disingenuous for me to say that we're a DIY band at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we have so many people helping us. I tell people that we're a DIT band. We do it together. We have a lot of people who help us. We have agents who help us book tours, and we have a manager, and we have accountants and lawyers. Not that we're at a super high level, but the level that we're at, you can't really function without other people helping you. Until 2 years ago, I was doing our own corporate taxes. And it's that's not a good use of my time. That's really weird, challenging stuff. And the month that I spent doing that would be better spent playing music and paying somebody else to do that. So yeah, I think we're a DIT band in the sense that, we're still very much in control of our own career. We co-manage the band with our manager, and we run our own label. We put out our own records. And, the reason that I started the label Little Dipper was because we were a DIY band for so long. And when we started bringing people on board, I just wanted to keep a kernel of our roots. I wanted to keep that little bit of DIY, no matter what size this band grows to. And so a great way to do that was to start a label, because I've had lots of experience working at record labels. And, it allows us to maintain control of our careers and maintain the rights to all of our music, and make sure that we're spending money how we want to spend money, and positioning ourselves the way we want to position ourselves. So yeah, I would say I can't think of anyone at this level who is truly DIY still. Kudos if they're out there, for sure. That's a huge achievement. Proud to be a do it together band.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's that style, and you can definitely see it in everything you guys do. So I guess just like what's next, and what can we look forward from you or the band in the next few months? I assume you're going to be touring after everything gets back to normal for like 20 years.
Yeah. Who knows when things will kind of ease up? When it's safe, we're going to be out there pounding the pavement, as we have done for the past 5 years, and as we will continue to do as soon as it's all safe and good again. For the time being, I think myself and the guys are just focused on being creative, writing songs, and hopefully I'm gonna make another book, and just like I said earlier in the interview, just kind of doing it without any expectations or pressure, because there's no point in putting expectation or pressure on ourselves in a world that is so uncertain at the moment. So I do hope that we will finish writing an album and record it sooner rather than later. It is a goal that we're working towards, but we're going to get there when we get there.
Thanks so much, man. This has been awesome.
Thank you for doing it. I had a great time talking to you, man.
All right, man. That's awesome. Again, thank you so much for being here and doing this with us. Stefan from PUP. This is 90.3 The Core.